Welcome back, councillors, administration, and residents of Strathmore. The Town Council has returned from our in-camera session, and we have a few different motions arising from the discussions that occurred in that session. Do I have a councillor ready to make the first motion on page 3 of the new document that Jonathan passed out? Councillor Peterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I would move that Council approve the Strathmore Affordable Housing Society bylaws as presented during closed meeting discussion under Section 24, subsection 1A of the Freedom of Information Protection and Privacy Act.
Thank you very much. Are there any comments or discussion? Councillor Wiley.
Yeah, so I have a bit of comments. I'm really pleased with the admin for bringing this up, the legal risks of administering the affordable housing program through our municipality. We have been given 3 options on how we intend to fix this. My preference wouldn't have been to create a society. Instead, my preference would have been to sell all the second mortgages to a third party, even though the loss might have been significant. Strathmore taxpayers are exposed to a $2.25 million liability through the 43 units here. Of course, it's extremely unlikely that that would ever come about. However, even a single unit is a $50,000 loss on average. So I would definitely have preferred a third-party option. And moreover, this doesn't even expose the residents that are currently at Bayside Place to any risk. And in combination with a land strategy, the profits from the sale could have been wisely used. So I'm not going to be in favor of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wiley. Councillor Peterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I am very much in favor of the of creating an affordable housing society, and in addition to the bylaw that's laid out, it also gives the community ample opportunity and structure to bring in other attainable housing strategies, and under this proposed set of parameters. And so I'm very, very pleased to see that the town is moving in a direction to be able to bring forward strategies around attainable housing. This is something that our economic development plan has been focused on. We understand from our business community that we're desperately in need of this, and so having that movement in the community where we can work with all persons across the scope and sequence of our communities in order to do this will be a benefit to our entire community.
Thank you very much, Councillor Peterson. Are there any other questions or comments? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? The motion is carried. Thank you very much. Is someone ready with the next motion? Councillor Peterson, thank you. Councillor Wagner, you've been appointed.
I move that Council appoint Ian Anderson to the Subdivision and Development Appeal Board for a term ending October 31st, 2024.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wagner. Any comments, questions arising from that motion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
And the motion is carried. Thank you. And I'm looking for someone to make the third motion, please. Councillor Peterson.
Your Worship, I'd move the Council approve the recommendation for 4.4, agenda item 4.4, land item, as presented in the confidential administrative report as discussed in camera, and that the details of the discussion remain confidential pursuant to Section 24, subsection 1A of the Freedom of Information Protection of Privacy Act.
Thank you very much, Councillor Peterson. Are there any questions or comments that would like to be raised? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
And the motion is carried. Moving on to Section 6 of our agenda today, a public hearing. We do not have any public hearings scheduled. Section 7 is public comments. I'm looking out into quite an empty room, so I'm going to assume that there are no public comments, members of the public here that would like to comment on anything on the agenda. Moving forward to item number 8 is the consent agenda. looking at the list of items we have on the proposed consent agenda in front of us, are there any items on this list that councillors would like to see removed? Councillor Wiley.
I'm going to have an amendment to 10.2 letters of support policy. So I'll need to remove it.
All right, we will strike 10.2 letters of support policy from the consent agenda. Are you willing to, are there any other amendments? Hearing none, Councillor Wiley, are you willing to make that motion, please?
Sure. The council adopt the recommendations of the following agenda reports by an omnibus motion. 9.1, regular council meeting minutes, February 21st. 10.3, Wheatland and Area Hospice Society letter of support. 10.4, Skills for Success letter of support. 10.5, Minister of Agriculture and Irrigation thank you letter. 10.6, Library Board auditor. 12.2.1, Library Board organizational meeting minutes, January 16th. 10.2.1, Library Board regular meeting minutes, January 16th. 12.1, letter regarding palliative care space at the Strathmore District Health Services site, including 91 signatures.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wiley. Does anyone have any comments or questions on that motion? Hearing and seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
And the motion is carried. Moving forward on the agenda, that takes us to item 10.1, the 2024 Recreation and Cultural Needs Assessment. And Mark, I think that will be you speaking to us tonight. Thank you very much, Mark. Or Director Pretzlaff. Sorry.
I'm good with either, Your Worship. Thank you, Your Worship and Council. Tonight I'm here to request funding to support a recreation and cultural needs assessment. As indicated in my report, this is part of our process of the Recreation Master Plan that was adopted by Council in January 2020. And as a result of future, our Recreation Master Plan is 5 years old and impacted by COVID. And so by conducting a recreation and cultural needs assessment, we'll have a better scope of our existing facilities and any potential future developments that may arise for the next short term. So if there's any questions of council, I'll do my best to answer them.
Any questions or comments from councillors?
Yeah, I have a question, please.
Councillor Montgomery.
Thank you. Mr. Pretzlaff, so I'm wondering what it talks about, that the town will be suggesting priorities, and two of them I'm curious about. So one is community accessibility. Can you talk about what community accessibility is in this context?
Through the chair, as part of the Recreation Master Plan, community accessibility is defined as the ability of all members of the community to access the facilities/amenities without being impeded by factors such as cost and exclusivity.
When you say exclusivity, can you be more specific?
I guess the question is do we want to, I guess the community accessibility all determines is whether, cost is a factor or whether it's exclusive, whether it's private or public potentially, and determined by that way. Whether it's exclusive to members of just Strathmore, whether it's exclusive to the community at large, or whether it's exclusive to the province. I guess it's kind of hard to define exclusivity, but these are some of the factors that the Recreation Master Plan is kind of suggested.
Okay, so we're like, when you say exclusivity, you're talking about like locality, so like just people in or without the community?
Potentially, yeah. I think that's what through the chair, that's what the needs assessment will tell us, is that what amenities we have currently and what's possibly that the community is requesting, and then to base also on what is around us and go in that way, potentially suggest some needs and things like that.
I see. And the other one that I'm wondering about that's being suggested as a priority is social inclusion. Can you talk about what that involves?
So through the chair, the master plan defines social inclusion as the ability of a facility or amenity to have significant positive impact on the ability of all members of the community to take part in the activities. The ability of the facility to encourage and welcome participation from all segments of the society, all segments of the community, including those from a wide variety of ethnicities as well as cultural backgrounds.
Can you give an example of what that looks like in practice?
I guess that through the chair that that a priority would be allow that, you know, we don't build I guess ultimately it's not just about ethnicities, excuse me, but it's also about disabilities, making programs, making spaces available so that every member of the community and as general could access these facilities. I'm sorry I don't have a better example.
Okay, but when you talk about like ethnicities and cultures and whatnot, what is that what the town is actually proposing be included as social inclusion, or are we just talking about ensuring there's like wheelchair access and things like that?
Through the chair, it could be defined as both. Ultimately, these are just, like I said, it's a recreation and cultural needs assessment is a snapshot of what's currently available to the community, both publicly and the surrounding area, and then providing recommendations on potential growth opportunities based on the feedback of the community in general.
So I'm just wondering, like, who picked that as a priority, the social inclusion aspect? Because I'm just interested to know, I guess, I have an idea of what that can include based on like conferences I've attended, and I just think that, you know, I think there should be caution around some of these things, and so I'm looking for more. I guess I'm interested in knowing what these look like in practice to ensure that these are things that we are interested in pursuing.
Through the chair, the Recreation Master Plan was adopted by the council that time. Again, this rec and needs assessment does not speak to any of these suggesting a prioritization framework. This is just a snapshot of opportunities that could be, or that the community is interested in based on what's available.
So is this being suggested as a priority then?
Through the chair, no, it is not. It is just requesting funding to conduct the needs assessment.
Okay. Sorry, just give me 1 second here.
Because it does say this, using the data we gather, a prioritization criteria will be established to rank the projects based on community accessibility, social inclusion. So we would be ranking.
And it does say, sorry, it does say that a prioritization criteria could be established to rank projects and suggests that it includes. We can, like, who or what is suggesting that those be included?
Through the chair, these are suggestions based on the Recreation Master Plan. Obviously, council can choose to change the prioritization matrix as they feel.
Okay, so you're saying the Recreation Master Plan suggests that social inclusion be established or be a part of the prioritization criteria?
That's correct. That's what was adopted by council.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Councilor Peterson.
No, that's fine. I think, Your Worship, I was just going back into my notes on our initial discussion when we established our our 2022 to 2025 strategic plan. And in that strategic plan, in support of this, intentional community development and community wellness both speak to this particular portion. And so if there's no more comment on it, I don't need to comment further. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. Does anyone else have any questions or comments on this item? Councillor Wiley.
Sure. I think if I want to guess, Councillor Montgomery's concern is that that word inclusivity is one of those loaded terms that says one thing, but there's a whole host of websites and groups that actually it means, to me, the exact opposite of what it says. Instead of inclusivity, it's actually divisiveness. So I think the concern is that when it says social inclusion, it doesn't mean that. If it means that through the cultural assessment, we discover that, for example, the Filipino Community Association has been asking me about getting a pig spit, in Kinsman Park, and that's something that they could actually move forward on, I think that would be just fantastic. That's a cultural need that is a socially inclusive idea. What exactly this term means to the people that we hire to do the social assessment, it could come back a very different thing, and then they're going to prioritize things based on what they think we mean by the term inclusivity. So I think that's probably my concern. I'm not sure about Councillor Montgomery's.
I think it is important to remember that they're coming back with a prioritization criteria to propose to us with a list. But what receives funding and what council's priorities turn out to be are in the end council's determination. So they could come out with, they'll give us a list to work off of. What we decide to ultimately proceed with is the choice of council. And I think it's also important to kind of point out that social inclusion can mean a lot of things. During the times of COVID, there was a lot of focus on social inclusion for seniors. And seniors who are now stuck in their houses and not feeling like they can leave. So social inclusion can not just be cultural, but it can be based on a wide variety of things. And to me, what this says is, we're asking our community what they need. One conversation I've seen happening in town recently, specific to this, is actually stay-at-home moms. Recently, there's been a rash of stay-at-home moms going, are there any other stay-at-home moms in Strathmore? I'm desperately looking for friends. That to me is an expression of a gap in social inclusion. Where are, stay-at-home moms hanging out? They're not finding each other. So it's about identifying gaps within the community that can be based on, goodness knows, a number of things, including things like, income level. Are the social opportunities we provide affordable for everyone and able to participate in that way? So I think my view on this is, I think it's important to look at social inclusion and make sure that everyone in our community is included and represented in some way, and they feel like Strathmore is their town, and that there's something here for them that will keep them here. Are there any other comments or questions on this item? Councillor Wiley.
I just hope that the consultant realizes that when it says social inclusion, it does not mean what inclusivity has come to mean, which is it separates people based on intersectionalities like ethnicity, race, gender. And so I'm just hopeful that it means exactly as Deputy Mayor Langmaid is saying, which is just a way to bring everyone into the rec and cultural facilities.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. It's a way to bring everyone in, and a way to offer something that means something to everybody, and is meaningful to everyone, and is a good experience for them. And sometimes that might look like something that culturally I do not have an interest in. For example, cricket. Cricket is exploding across the globe right now. It's exploded across the globe forever. I still don't understand cricket. There are a lot of people who enjoy cricket. Maybe there's enough people in Strathmore that they might want a cricket team one day. That's not something that I will be participating in, but I hope that maybe if they wanted, one day they could have a cricket team too. Councillor Peterson.
I was just looking, as I said before, Your Worship, looking at my notes from when we struck the strategic plan, and I know that we talked about social inclusion in terms of equal opportunity for social, political, and economic participation, that regardless of background or identity or circumstances, that people may engage fully in our community, that they will have access to resources and enjoy equal rights as guaranteed under the Constitution, and that aims to address and eliminate barriers, and like the work that we've done with Siksika to address discrimination.
Thank you very much. Are there any other further comments or questions on this topic? He's ready with a motion. No, Councillor Wagner.
All right, I move that council approve a capital budget request in the amount of $60,000 and funded from the Fiscal Stabilization Reserve for recreational and cultural needs assessment.
Thank you very much. Comments or questions? Hearing nothing.
I have a comment, please. Thank you. So when I like look up the definition of social inclusion, and this is found at like say the World Bank, one of the definitions they provide is the process of improving the ability, opportunity, and dignity of people disadvantaged on the basis of their identity to take part in society. So I just hope that we aren't going to be going down paths that are going to be looking at differences among us and, you know, kind of, I guess, you know, appealing to those differences. I would prefer that things be done inclusively and with inclusion in mind, which brings people together without kind of paying mind to, you know, the basis of their identity or you know, things about them that, you know, separate them from other people. I would hope that the town and our council, of course, too, would support not focusing on things, you know, like identity or identity politics, and just focus on ways that we can bring the community together without, as I said, focusing on those things that obviously identify us as kind of different individuals. And I think that doing a needs assessment is a good idea. That will help us to it'll help guide us to some extent. In the end, obviously the kind of decisions are going to come down to council, and yeah, I guess I'll just leave it at that. But we live in a time where there's kind of these loaded terms floating around that tend to have meanings that are not quite what they, you know, seem to be. And that's why it's important that we define these and determine ahead of time with clarity what they actually mean to us. Because, you know, if we use like, you know, the definitions provided by organizations, you know, from various parts of the world or the federal government, it can potentially not fit very well with our community or cause problems. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wiley.
Yeah, I'll be supporting this motion too, because I think by and large, everything in here is good and strong. And I also take administration and the rest of council at face value, and they say social inclusion is not meant to divide. It's meant to bring people together, focusing on our common beliefs, which is in our town, our municipality, and our rec and our culture. So I'll be supporting it.
Councillor Peterson.
Thank you, Worship. I think it's no secret in this council and this community that there are varying opinions on this matter, and I welcome that because I think it's a representation of community. But I also do think that it's really important to acknowledge that what we do is driven by the strategic plan, and that our senior leadership team have a really clear idea of what the goals are in this. And so we understand as well that issues such as diversity, equity, and inclusion may not be understood in the same commonality that Councillor Wiley referenced. And so while we may hold very similar values, we do not always hold the same understanding. And so I know that that's why we have to depend clearly on the democratically driven process of our strategic plan so that we can come to the fullness of this in debate when our really fantastic staff bring this forward.
Hearing and seeing no other hands up or lights on, I will call the question. All in favor? And that motion is carried.
Thank you, Your Worship, Council.
Thank you very much, Director Pretzlaff. Moving on to the next item on our agenda. That is 10.2 Letters of Support Policy, and Councillor Wiley. Oh, sorry, no. Veronica, come on up. Sorry. I got ahead of myself.
Hi, good evening. So Letters of Support Policy 1109 was presented to Council back Committee of the Whole on February 14th. At that time, the intent of this policy is really to streamline the process so that we can get those letters out in a more efficient manner for really common types of letters and so administration is seeking tonight Council support.
Thank you very much. Questions? Councillor Wiley.
Sure. At that time, I had said that I thought 2 business days to get back over email was too short, and I was hoping that administration would be coming back with a longer version of that.
Yes, so through the chair, administration did take a look at that, and the true intent of this policy is to really help us with some of those really quick turnaround items that require that short turnaround, because if we can wait those longer days, then we can maybe wait a few more and bring it to council and whatnot. So really having that ability for that quick 48 to business day turnaround is to help us with those items that we don't want to miss deadlines for or have to call a special council meeting or anything like that at that point.
So I really, really implore the rest of council to listen to this. We're part-time councillors. Most of us work other jobs. Most of us are still responsible for family members. And that's a good thing. Like, you want a council that is busy. You want councillors that are involved in their community, in their parishes, in their families, in their jobs. If we pass policies that make it so part-time councillors are unable to keep up with the workload, then we're really impeding the ability for part-time councillors to run in elections. So I'm really strongly against giving only 2 business days. I think 4 would be a lot more reasonable. You imagine something comes to us on a Monday and already on a Wednesday. The simple fact is I don't do council work every day of the week. I don't do council work every second day of the week. There are times that I set aside that I am able to fully immerse myself. But to the rest of council, please do not pass a policy that requires us to be checking email every day or 2. It's just simply not possible to have councillors that are full-time family, community, work, and then also trying to do a good job of this on top of it. So please, let's reconsider this. 4 days would be so much more preferred.
Councillor Peterson.
So Councillor Wiley, I appreciate the attention that you give to things like this, and I really considered your request in our last discussion of this. But when I went into Section D on page 3 of 5 and page 195 of our agenda, it says that if the request is part of a larger initiative already reviewed by council, so we would have already had to review it. So this wouldn't be new information, and I stand to be corrected. So if I'm wrong, then I would accede to Councillor Wiley's wishes. But if it's already something that's coming, through a larger initiative that council's already seen, then, and you know, having seen it, we have opportunity for input into it, then I'm fine with it the way it is. But if I can have confirmation of that is the case.
So
Administration?
that is absolutely correct. The other piece that we just want to highlight for council is that quite often these requests come in on a very short turnaround on us, right? Is really where the 2 days came from, is that we're under quite a, and council respectively, under a very short timeline to turn it around, and so that's what the 2 days is really coming from. And again, it's very frequent because quite often they're tied to grants that are tied to existing projects and things that we're supporting in relation to the strategic plan, and so just to provide a little bit more context.
Thank you very much. Councillor Mitzner.
I will support the 2 days. I believe it's more of an administrative task, and I honor that you represent us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you need a motion, Your Worship?
Yeah, I think it would happen because there shouldn't be discussion, but at this point it's been kind of questions, so I would entertain a motion at this point.
I'll just accede to administration. Do you need a motion to pass the policy?
Thank Your Worship and Council. Yeah, we would need a
Because it's
motion
been
to pass
pulled out of the agenda? Yeah.
Yeah, we would need a motion to pass the policy as council deems appropriate.
Your Worship, I would move that we accept policy number 1109, title Letters of Support Policy.
Thank you very much. And with that motion on the floor, I will turn to Councillor Montgomery.
Thank you. So I will start with a question to administration, and that question, am I missing the part where there is a mechanism to have the letter come before council if there is any objections or concerns? Like I noticed in 7.1B, 7.2C, 7.3D, and 7.4D, it does mention something about objections, but then it does not, you know, prescribe any sort of action if there are objections.
Through the chair, yes. So it would come back in that sense. If there is an objection, I don't, have the policy in front of me, but we did include the flow chart as well in the RFD that came through in the agenda package.
Yeah, so I saw in the flow chart that it does have that outlined, but the policy itself doesn't mention it. And so I'm wondering if council has any objections to inserting language that would direct administration to bring letters to council if there is objections.
I have a question. Just a question to admin.
Councillor Peterson.
Thank you. Just a question regarding Councillor Montgomery's point. The flow chart forms part of the policy, correct?
Through your worship, the flow chart is actually not an attachment to the policy. It's just information to kind of help think through the policy. And so just a clarification too on the section about the 2 days. A letter would always need council's authorization to be signed. This policy would allow, if there are no objections in those 2 days, for the mayor to sign a letter. If there is an objection, it would really depend on kind of the context of that request, right? Like Carol already mentioned, some of those requests are coming and we only have 24 hours to turn around on those, or even 2 days to turn around on those letters. So there would be no need to bring that letter to council if there is an objection, because we wouldn't be able to meet that deadline. Now, if there was still an opportunity for that letter to get signed, then the only other recourse would be to bring that letter to council for formal approval at that point.
All right. Councillor Wiley.
Sure, but in all my time on council, I can't think of a time we ever had to have an emergency meeting over a letter that was due. Maybe one time we had to do that. My concern is this. As we just saw in the previous discussion about social inclusion and what that means, just because it's in our strat plan, it doesn't necessarily mean that all the councillors are going to agree with the, for example, letter of support. And then I think our job as counselors is to have those debates in public. If the turnaround time is only 2 days and a counselor is unable to, a part-time counselor is not checking their email, myself, every 2 days, then there's going to be things that come out apparently from the entire council that have never been debated in front. Again, all that's to say, I actually support this policy. All I'm asking from the rest of council is to please reconsider the 2 business days and make it 4 business days, which I think is a lot more reasonable for part-time council.
Yeah, from my own personal perspective, I'm in support of the 2 days for a couple of reasons. One, along the same vein as Councillor Wiley just described, I actually can't recall a time when we've raised objections to a letter that's been proposed to us. So I'm not sure that we have, a basis to be really terribly concerned about at this point. We don't have a history of that being an issue. And on top of that, if we are waiting 4 or 5 business days turnaround time for approval of things from council, then from my perspective, that kind of makes this policy moot, because that is 1 week of business, and that is what would take us to the next council meeting, unless it's the end of the month. And at that point, then it kind of, to me, maybe doesn't meet the need that we would hope it would. I understand that all councillors have different amounts of time that they're available to commit to their position here on council, and I respect that there are limitations to that, and I know that I have limitations to that every day too. But ultimately, from my perspective, I accepted this position and by extension the requirements of it, and that's my personal point of view on that one. Jason, I'm reading your name, Dave. Councillor Montgomery, pardon me.
You can call me Jason. So I guess I'll offer an amendment, and it's going to be for sections 7.1D, 7.2C, 7.3D, and 7.4D, and that's just those sections where it talks about if there's objections raised, and the amendment will state if any. It's basically just copying the language from the previous section, by the way. If any concerns or objections are raised, Legislative Services will bring the item to the next available regular council meeting for council consideration. And it's just basically just kind of putting in writing what the flow chart indicates.
Thank you, Councillor Montgomery. If I might maybe perhaps offer a friendly amendment to your amendment in terms of would you be willing to consider something along the lines of not just the next council meeting, but would you say even potentially an email motion if something was urgent? Could we shorten the wording to just be will be brought to council for decision, and that way it leaves us some flexibility on how that might come back to us in terms of if there ever is a time-sensitive issue?
Actually, I think like perhaps what we could do instead of that, if you don't mind, is rather than saying regular council meeting for next available, if we just said next available council meeting, and that way, because I'm not sure we can vote over email, but we could call a special meeting if that was necessary to kind of close that.
I'm just going to turn to administration here for some clarification since they're nodding at me.
That would be my recommendation, right? Just to make sure everything's above board, like really, decisions and stuff should be made publicly versus email motions. So our recommendation would be that, again, if something was that urgent and emergent, that we would work with you to coordinate a special council meeting.
My friendly amendment to the amendment is not required. I withdraw the friendly amendment to the amendment.
Okay, and if you'd like, I could restate what the amendment could be.
If you could, please.
Yep. So it will be, if any concerns or objections are raised, Legislative Services will bring the item to the next available council meeting for council consideration.
Thank you very much. Yes, I think so. Councillor Peterson.
So I just have a question to administration regarding this. So is this consistent with the flow chart? Because here's my problem. I, at this point, can't support the motion because I think it derails the intent of the policy. The whole idea of this was to not cause additional time and lapses in time and gaps in the capacity of nonprofits to be able to get these letters of support to where they need it to go. So if this in any way would impede the process of what is on this flow chart, then I'm not in favor of it. But I'm not certain that it does. But if it does, then I'm not in favor of it. And speaking further to this, I'm one of the most, over 40 years of working for nonprofits and volunteering for nonprofits and community, I am so guilty of being the one who've gone through a succession of half a dozen different mayors to say, can you please sign this letter of support today, because I have to have the policy, or the grant application in tomorrow. And as busy as we are trying to do this, if you're working for a nonprofit and working a full-time job and trying to get a grant in, you need letters of support. And I trust that our senior leadership team understands that council has approved certain plans, policies, and bylaws through resolution, and they understand that that's what's driving them, and they don't need this oversight from us. So that's my opinion, Your Worship. So unless somebody tells me that this is not going to impair the process in any way, according to the flow chart, then I'm happy to support it. Otherwise, I'm not. So I need help from administration. If you can't answer it today, I'm happy to wait.
Mr. Strathy.
Thank you, Worship and Council. So the motion to amend the motion to adopt the policy is to just clarifies that if an objection is raised during this process, that the letter will be brought to a subsequent council meeting. I don't think it contradicts the flow chart. Yeah, I don't think it contradicts the flow chart at all.
Yeah, then I'm in favor, Your Worship. Thank you. Thank you for entertaining that.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. Councillor Wiley.
Oh, sir, mine, it's not about the amendment, never mind.
Councillor Montgomery.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I'm just slow to lower my hand. Thank you.
All right. Are there any further questions or comments on the amendment to the motion? So right now, we're only voting on the amendment to the motion. Hearing none, I'll call the question on the amendment. All in favor? The amendment has passed. So now, the amended motion is now the main motion that we're returning to debating. So are there, on the original motion that was brought forward, are there any further comments? Councillor Wiley.
Yeah, just the last time, I just ask again that council reconsider this, bring it back with the 4 days I'm requesting. Just keep in mind that I'm going to use the word diversity here. A diversity of councillors in different places in their lives mean a diversity of opinions and better representation for the people of the town. If policies are created that limit it to only people who can dedicate full-time hours to a council position, then you're losing the opportunity to have better representation. I just think this policy is moving in that direction ever so slightly. I like everything else about this policy. I'm just asking for 4 days.
Thank you. Any further comments, questions, or discussion on this topic? Councillor Peterson.
So clarification, so Councillor Wiley has moved an amendment from 2 to 4 days.
I was unable to move the amendment just because it was repeated so many times within the bylaw. I just wasn't able to identify all of them. Unless, of course, administration could just accept an amendment of every time it says 2 days to change it to 4 days. In that case, I'm prepared to make an amendment.
I think as long as everyone at the administration table and everyone around the council table is clear on what you're proposing.
Okay, then I will propose an amendment that every place in the policy where it says 2 days response time is changed to 4 business days response time.
All right.
Administration, does that work?
All right. I'm seeing nods from administration, lights are going off, which means I will open up the floor. Does anyone have any comments, questions, or discussion on the amendment that's been proposed from changing the references for 2 days for review to 4 days of review? Hearing and seeing no comments, questions, or discussion, I'll call the question on the amendment specifically. All in favor? And opposed? And the motion has been defeated. So we're back to the original motion as amended. Yes. I get it there. Thank you. Does anyone have any further comment, questions, or discussion on the motion that has been amended? Hearing and seeing nothing, I'll call the question. All in favor? And opposed? And the motion has carried. Thank you very much, everyone, and thank you for your patience with me while I keep amendments straight. Thank you, Veronica. So 10.2, moving on to the next item in our agenda, which is item 11 now on our revised agenda now that since we ended up moving a few items around earlier, which is bylaws, and we have no bylaws coming forward to council this evening. In section 12, we're moving on to councillor information and inquiries. 12.1, questions between councillors and council statements. Does anyone have a question for councillors, council, or a statement? If I might maybe take a moment on my own soapbox, I'd like to just recognize that Friday, March 8th is International Women's Day, and we have some pretty phenomenal women in Strathmore. So I just want to take this opportunity to shout out all the women of Strathmore and how amazing you are, and wish you a very happy and early International Women's Day. Hearing no other comments, questions, or statements, we'll move on to...
Deputy Mayor, just in the interest of equality and inclusion, is there an International Men's Day? Yeah. I don't know.
That is a very good question. I am not aware of one. It is an opportunity for someone to start a trend. Now I'm all confused. Thanks, Councillor Peterson. You got me all mixed up. On to 12.2, boards and committee reports. Those two items have been accepted under our omnibus motion that we made earlier. On to 12.3, question and answer period. Do any councillors have any questions for administration? Hearing and seeing none, we'll move on to 12.4, administrative inquiries, which there are none. And then on to 12.5 and 12.5.1, cemetery bylaw amendments. Councillor Wiley, I believe you have a motion to read into the record here.
All right, this is the one where you want to settle in, put on some soft music. Here we go. The council direct administration to prepare a bylaw with the following amendments to bylaw 2331 as presented in attachment 2 of the November 1st, 2023 cemetery bylaw number 2331 request for decision as amended. That section 8.3A be amended to state monuments sitting on a full-size burial plot are recommended not to exceed a maximum height of 3 feet, including base, maximum depth of 1 foot, including base, and maximum width of 2.5 feet, not including base. The cemetery coordinator, at their discretion, can prevent monuments considered to be too large for safety reasons, deemed to impede other plots, or preventing landscaping and maintenance. Where there is a ribbon or base present, all monuments will be placed upon the base or ribbon. That section 8.4A be amended to state, flat grave markers must be flush with the ground and not impede other plots or landscaping and maintenance. That section 13.1 be amended to state, the public may visit the cemetery at any time that Strathmore's regular parks are open. That section 13.8 be deleted in its entirety. That section 13.9 be deleted in its entirety. That the following be added to section 13 of the bylaw. Grave decorations, such as, but not limited to, statues, crosses, plaques, benches, and vases, must be made of granite, marble, metal, craft, or another equally durable material. Items made of glass, ceramic, china, and other easily breakable material will be removed immediately and placed in storage. The town will make reasonable efforts to provide written notice to the authorized representative of any disrepair of the grave decorations. The authorized representative will be provided 30 days to contact the town with a repair or replacement plan. If no contact is made, the town will hold it for an additional 90 days. If no contact is made at the expiry of 90 days of the removal, the town will dispose of the grave decoration. That Section 13.12 be amended to state, seasonal decorations shall be allowed to be placed 1 week prior to the holiday, but cannot impede maintenance or be a safety hazard. Seasonal decorations that are still in place 1 week from the conclusion of the holiday will be removed and disposed of without notice. That Section 13.13 be deleted in its entirety. That Section 13.14 be amended to remove the word benches. That Section 13.20 be deleted in its entirety. That Section 13.22 be amended to state, no person shall cultivate any plot without the consent of the cemetery coordinator. That Section 13.26 be amended to state, any memorial tribute or grave decoration considered offensive will be brought to council for the possibility of removal. That Schedule A, penalties, Section 13, be amended to remove the word benches and from the item on erecting or constructing, and the word care from the item on cultivating. And that council direct administration to develop a permitting process for residents who want to apply for decorations under the condition that they maintain the plot and bring the proposed permit process and revised cemetery bylaw to the April 10th, 2024 Committee of the Whole meeting for council's decision. And I do have a comment on the motion.
Please continue on.
So just to remind council, we're not actually voting on whether or not we support these amendments. All we're doing is asking administration to bring this to the April 10th Committee of the Whole meeting for us to discuss. I think my recommendations offer a reasonable compromise between what I agree with administration on desiring to make our cemetery easier to maintain, which is to say more affordable for taxpayers. But I think we also have to balance our residents' requests to have a cemetery that is beautiful, inclusive of their cultural needs, and reflect the diversity of uses. As a council, we must find the balance between our maintenance need, saving money for our taxpayers, but also our community's needs.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wiley. Just to kind of kick us off here and to provide a little bit of context to start off our conversation. Prior to the meeting, I was able to sit down with CAO Scoble and kind of discuss this motion a little bit and how we might proceed. And as I understand it, there are three pieces of information that administration is really looking for from us. One is for us to decide when we would like to revisit this again. I understand your motion says April 10th, but it's my understanding that given kind of a 2-week delay, incidental delay that we had, that might end up being a little bit tight, especially if, and this comes forward, the amount of detail we would like to have around these changes when we discuss it further. For example, how well do we want this costed out? For, you know, if we accept all of these changes and start here, how does that affect, you know, maintenance and operations going forward on a budgetary level? So those are kind of some of the questions that have come up that I'm hoping we can address as part of this discussion. Would anyone like to kick us off? Hearing none.
No,
Councillor Wiley.
Yeah. The cost, if you look at my amendments, actually does very little to change. All it's doing is allowing for hard metal works or stone decorations to exist. Those are the kinds of things that can be maintained right up to the item. And then there would be, I guess, a cost associated with the permitting process. But my changes didn't really do much at all other than allow benches. So I don't think there would be much cost associated.
All right. Thank you very much. Councillor Wagner?
Just one of the things that I'm not too keen on was, and I forget exactly where it was, but it was mentioned at the discretion of the cemetery coordinator. I don't think that is a fair, I don't think it's a fair thing to put onto, and I can't remember exactly which one it was. I don't think it's a fair thing to put onto the cemetery coordinator to make those decisions at their discretion, because if cemetery coordinators change, then things may, again, I don't think there's consistency there. So it's kind of a gray.
Then the problem wouldn't be with my amendment, because that's the language that's already in the bylaw that we've approved and given second reading on, which over and over again gives that discretion to the cemetery coordinator. So I'm just using the language that already exists in the bylaw. That wasn't part of my amendment. That was already there.
Councillor Peterson?
I just have questions. So initially, we were going to bring this back in May, correct?
Correct.
And so I think that's what administration was kind of counting on, was that it would come back in May and not in April. I just asked them. Yeah. Okay. And then my second one is, I took extensive notes, and I'm pretty familiar with them because this has kind of come in some form to us for weeks now, so we've been looking at it. So I had a lot of notes that came up through our debate in November from our Director of Operations. And so many of the things that she related to us had a cost connected to it. The decision to leave benches has a you know, and I don't want to debate this, but there were just so many, because you can't debate a notice of motion. So there were just so many things that were in her report that spoke to cost, removing a bench, adding a bench, changing a ribbon, you know, cleaning up, you know, if we change the processes. And so I think I would still want to hear that. I would still want to hear that. You know, I promised at this table that I would give every opportunity to, you know, take every opportunity to look really carefully at every single amendment that you had put forward, because I know how hard you've worked on it, and I really respect hard work in that regard. But I also need that balance on the other side to know that there's not a deleterious consequence to the larger community in all of this. So I think time might be required in the depth of your amendments for administration to look at it.
I didn't pick the April
I know
date.
you
asked
didn't.
administration
Yeah, I know you didn't, so
Well, through the chair,
I
just
will
for
defer to them.
clarification, so yes, we had said May originally, then it was moved to April, but now we're thinking May again because we've lost a couple of weeks here through the item being deferred to this evening, and we are getting into the busy season. We'll be dealing with drainage for the next 2 weeks. We got street cleaning to do, we got parks to open and all that kind of stuff.
So
It is our busy
administration
season.
just need to change the date, April, for this notice of motion?
Pardon me?
Can I just change the April date to May then?
Well,
Well, it's kind of, sorry, I think
yeah,
that might even be
maybe
difficult.
could I add some comments here, Deputy Mayor? So council, just to maybe help the discussion a little bit tonight, so council could decide to adopt the notice of motion this evening in its entirety, portions of it, or not adopt it at all. But at the end of the day, it comes down to timing as to what work is done and when it is done by administration. So adoption of some or all of the notice motion would drive work for administration, but council should be clear on the scope of work this evening. Does council want administration to incorporate some or all of the amendments into a draft bylaw to discuss at the committee of the whole? Or does council want administration to provide an operational, technical, legislative, and financial synopsis of some or all of the proposed amendments in advance of discussion at the committee of the whole? Or does council not want administration to undertake any work on any proposed amendments until after a discussion at the committee of the whole? If the notice of motion is not passed in part or in entirety this evening, the proposed amendments can still be discussed at the committee of the whole. So administration would respectfully request that council discuss, debate, and decide on the scope of work, and then seek advice from administration on the timing of these to discuss them. The appropriate committee of the whole that administration would recommend for further discussion will be dependent on the scope decided by council, assessed against other priorities and seasonal activities. So before providing a recommendation on timing for the future discussion, administration may request a brief recess to confer.
We are in a position where we have hit 10 o'clock p.m. So at this point, I am wondering if there's someone willing to make a motion to both briefly recess for 2 to 5 minutes and also extend the meeting to, we'll say 10:30 to be safe, but I hope we're out of here before that.
So move, Your Worship. I would move that we extend the meeting till 10:30 and that we take a 5-minute respite.
Thank you very much. Everyone hearing the motion, any comments, questions, concerns? Councillor Wood, hearing none, all in favor?
All right.
The motion is carried and opposed? Thank you. The motion is carried. We will be taking a brief recess for 3 to 5 minutes and return at about 10:05. Thank you.